That's right, Tim. Well, one of a few fires we're watching this from our affiliate KFDA. We can actually see this is the before, and now here's the live picture. So here's the aftermath kind of that same prairie grasses that are burning out there. And Brad, I know we've been watching this closer to. Oh, wait, is there an aircraft flying around right now? Let's maybe stay with this live picture a second here in Texas.
That definitely looks like an aerial tanker, maybe. We'll see. Ooh, we need to focus. No, that looks like a spotter.
Okay.
So that's one of those Cessnas I think they use, and they're just probably assessing the situation.
Trying to get eyes on it.
Yeah, because just to give them, and what they do is they circle this for like hours. There's one in North Carolina where I was watching the same kind of thing. They were circling it over near the Tennessee line.
Yeah, let me go to your map here in North Carolina, show people what's happening at home. I also do have our Anson County camera ready too.
Yeah, so this was the fire I was watching in the mountains, Tim. This is called the Poplar Fire. I noticed this morning. The Forest Service put out some social media on this saying, this was a pretty significant fire. What struck me about this, so last night I see this fire. It's small. It's like 50 acres. It's like 40 to 50% contained. I wake up this morning. It's 100 acres, and it went from 20% contained this morning to 0. So something happened overnight where the fire either jumped the line or briefly. Now it's 135 acres, and they had aerial assets up there as well. But James is going to show you a camera from our Anson County camera, which is over in near Lylesville. And we can tell from our watch duty map that this is actually a controlled burn. It's just east of our camera there.
North of where you are in the map. I think it's north of
Is it the north one?
Yeah, because I'm looking north right now. So I think it might be in Montgomery County.
So it might be one of these up here near Troy. Maybe up that way. Yeah, so there's a bunch of prescribed burns out that way. And Tim, one of the things I noticed today, we still had a pretty high fire danger, but it wasn't as crazy as yesterday. The winds aren't as bad today. And you can tell, like when you look at a fire, you can see the smoke plume going more straight up than blowing side to side. Kind of tells you that we probably got better ventilation, we call it. So our gusts down here were only been about 15 to 20 maybe. Yesterday we had a gust to like 40, so the winds are much calmer today.
It's not windy. It is still really dry. A lot of times you got to remind yourself, even with a cool down, that can mean even drier air. And so that's kind of what we're seeing for today. Looking at the infrared satellite over the last couple of hours, guys, it does look like there's a little bit of a black dot on the northern side of Anson County. So even if it's not indicated on that map, there's definitely something going on right there.
That would make sense, because right before we started, Brad was talking about how dark some of the smoke seemed.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty dark smoke for a wildfire. So I am curious if maybe there's a structure or something involved with this as well. Oh, I see it now. I see it.
It's right there on the border.
Yeah.
Right on the border of Stanley County and Anson, kind of near, Montgomery as well, but just definitely northern Anson County at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. That's not really showing up on the watch duty map. So it might be something that relatively new that might have started here. So we'll see if it populates here, but I see that on the satellite. You have the relative humidities pulled up there, Tim, and those are pretty low, but they were lower yesterday because the air temperature was so much higher, which is one of those, catch-22s. Yeah. You mentioned the cooler air actually helps because it's still dry, but at least the humidity isn't as I think at one point we had like a 14% relative humidity yesterday just behind the front because it was still like 80-something, and the dew point was like in the 20s and teens. So crazy dry air. And, Tim, I think that's the one thing I start looking at the pattern. I'm probably like you. I hate the pollen. And so I'm naturally looking for rain for the pollen, but then you start looking at the rain chances and you're like, boy, we're not going to get rain to wash this pollen out. And boy, this fire danger and the drought could get a whole lot worse here in the next 7 to 10 days.
It's concerning, and we started by talking about the poplar fire just a minute ago, which is growing a bit up to 100-something acres. That's the first one kind of in my memory, maybe I'm wrong, but it's really using a lot of that Helene debris.
Yeah.
It's kind of right in the heart of where it was most badly hurt with Hurricane Helene, right there on the Tennessee border, close to where a lot of those disasters happen, right by those hospitals in Tennessee and everything like that. There's probably just an untold amount of debris untouched still from the hurricane over a year and a half ago. So there's a lot of dry fuel for these fires to take advantage of. And, gosh, that's something I think they put out that outlook back in November going into the winter time that, hey, this could be a problem. Let's keep an eye on this through the winter months. But even here we are in the spring months, seems like that's starting to become an issue because we haven't gotten any substantial rainfall overall.
Yeah, and the other problem with that is, it's just not the timber, as we've learned talking to fire officials. Obviously got all that downed wood, Tim, that's the fuel, but they're also concerned because of the downed trees, it's just access to some of these areas has been impossible because if you've been to the mountains, you kind of see these, what they call them fire roads. They just look like trails, right? But those are built, they're natural fire breaks, and they also allow for fire crews and rescue crews to get into the backcountry. Those are all covered in downed trees. So getting to some of these locations makes fighting these fires almost impossible. And so that's their other concern is like once a fire starts, getting those firefighters in there is going to be really hard. They're going to literally have to hike in over all that debris to get there. So that's just another problem we're going to have to deal with.
I think so, and we'll keep in mind, depending on how busy things get, and hopefully they don't get too busy.
Yeah.
But the goal isn't always to completely put out every fire.
Yep.
If it's not really affecting or close by to where people live, they might let it go a little while. They might kind of choose where to put their resources where they're needed. But especially when it comes to the mountains, that's not always the goal. We see that with the Canadian wildfires that people just say, well, just put them all out. What do you mean? Well, you can't always get to them, and they don't always impact people directly. So these are all things that will have to be assessed as we go forward, depending on how many of these kind of pop up over the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, and when you talk to wildland firefighters, they'll tell you there's a big difference between being 100% contained and being out. That's not the same thing. I think sometimes people at home might think, oh, it's 100% contained. That just means they have containment lines, or like you said, it's in an area where they're just going to let it burn out, but it's not out. They have it under control where they have either a border like a road or a river or a creek, and they just let it burn that fuel because obviously you kind of want that fuel to burn up. If it can burn in a controlled manner with a containment line, that's probably going to be a good thing, Tim. It will help clear out some of that debris.
For sure. And, wildfires are something that they do happen naturally, or at least they're meant to happen in the course of time, at least in periods. They're not always supposed to happen with human causes. Some of these can be lightning caused. I think there's one fire going right now that's lightning caused, not the poplar one. But you don't want too many of these to happen, and certainly we don't want them to impact anybody's homes or livelihoods, for sure.
Yeah, Tim, that's like yesterday we were talking about the fire danger, and I said that several times on the air. I said, I think sometimes people think when we have a high fire danger, they think fires just start by themselves. When we're in a high fire danger, the conditions are favorable for fires to spread, but as you mentioned, we are the biggest ones to blame for these things starting. It's, I think, like it's over 90% of fires are human caused of some kind. There's very few like natural causes other than lightning, and believe it or not, spontaneous combustion is another one, which is pretty rare but does happen. But some of the human causes, obviously, people think being careless with smoking items or a fire that you're doing you don't put out. But one of the things I learned living in Michigan, I never thought about till I lived up there, is a lot of people have ATVs and Jeeps and they like going off-roading, and they don't have spark arresters on their muffler. And you drive through high grass or timber areas and sparks come out of your muffler, or your muffler itself touches tall grass, it can start a fire. And then chains dragging from you probably have seen this on the interstate, dragging from a trailer, shoot sparks off. And this sometimes can be ways that fires start that people don't even mean to do, but it's a human ignition source.
And that's when it really matters on how dry is the grass.
Yes.
How dry are those kind of materials? Because if it's not that dry, those things don't matter quite as much. But when it is dry, that's a whole different ball game. And I think that's kind of where we are right now. But gosh, these are pretty tough images out there in the middle of the country. Looks like they have some pretty strong winds that they're battling out there in Texas as well.
Yeah, you see that smoke plume. I just want to show this graphic quickly because I updated it today, Tim, and I'm sure you probably have something similar for Greensboro, but this is our 12-month rainfall deficit by month, or surplus. I say deficit because we only had 2 months in the last 12 months with a surplus. And you can see since September in Charlotte, every single month for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 months has been below average rainfall. It's crazy. I can't remember a stretch like this where we didn't have something kind of give us some wet weather, and now we're going into April. Hopefully that pattern flips, But as you're showing there, the 7-day rainfall is not looking great. I mean, there's not like a front. There's not like the Gulf or the Atlantic is opening up to a big moisture plume and a front coming down. That's the kind of pattern we actually need, Tim. And it's just not us. It seems like drought is really impacting a lot of the country right now, and it's been pretty dry for especially the southeast.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be difficult, I think, to fix this, and maybe eventually we'll get a pattern change, but it doesn't seem to be the case right now. We did have, just a couple minutes left here. We got some news from the Hurricane Center today.
Yeah.
We wanted to chat about that. They're going to
Yep.
change subtly, somewhat, the way that they present their hurricane cone. And I kind of had to look at this carefully to see, okay, what's different here?
Yeah.
But it has to do with the products that they're going to shade on
Yes.
the maps. So they're actually going to be including tropical storm warnings, hurricane warnings for inland areas, not just
Yep.
along the coast. That should hopefully communicate a little bit more risk for areas away from the storm. And they're also going to keep that cone shaded all the way through. They used to kind of de-emphasize
Yeah.
the day 3 through 5 range, and it looks like they're going to stop doing that, as I understand it.
Yeah, and so for people looking at this, you're probably saying, well, I don't see anything different. But you're right. If you look at the advisories, the watches and warnings, it kind of shows more the track of the impacts, Tim, not the center, which is what the cone is showing. It's where the center goes. And I think that whether people on purpose, it's not, that's just human nature. They thought if they weren't in the cone, they were safe. But when you look at those watches and advisories, Tim, like for Florida, this is Milton. This is not a current map, by the way. This is for old Milton. It shows the whole Florida peninsula in some type of tropical watch or warning, even though the eye is going to be in the middle of the state. So it's supposed to imply that, yeah, that's where the eye is, but the impacts will be across the entire state.
And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to fix everything, but probably just acknowledging that, yes, there are dangers outside that cone. We know that in North Carolina, Western North Carolina wasn't inside most of that cone toward the end of things.
Nope.
And they had the worst impacts out of pretty much everybody in the hurricane. So these are all things that we're not talking about them right now, but they're announcing them. I believe they will be taking effect for this season. Is that right?
That is correct. So this will be in effect for this upcoming hurricane season, which starts on June 1st in the Atlantic and May 15th in the Eastern Pacific. So, I'm just looking at this graphic, and, the Milton made landfall near Tampa, and at the time, Charleston, South Carolina was under a tropical storm watch. So that just goes to show you how far the impacts are from where the center of the storm actually went. So I think it'll be a good thing, Tim. It'll make our jobs hopefully a little bit easier. We'll see.